it's fascinating that you bring up the African American community. Or what's really fascinating is in this book you dive into the history. I don't see any other book that's really gone into the history this way. And we've had other books on fast food and Cheeto Nation, so to speak, and things like this. But it's interesting, after the Civil War, the African American community, to me at least, it sounds like, was actually perhaps the healthiest because they knew how to farm and they knew what to eat, and they weren't buying the expensive foodstuffs that they couldn't get. What was going on then? And then fast forward to what happened with, I don't even know if I'm going to pronounce this right, pellagra.
Pellagra, right. That's correct. In other words, what we're saying right now is the idea that Black Americans are somewhat genetically destined to be more diabetic and more have more strokes and more brain and more prostate and breast cancer. That's totally not true, because throughout history, and particularly after the Civil War, when Black Americans were freed, they achieved educational opportunity and advancements. They were more centenarians, more long-lived than the white Southerners were, because they had been growing a lot of their own vegetables and had more access to produce. So it's not like, so I'm saying that it's the food you're eating that's determining these outcomes that are very often blamed on genetics. And this is where this false idea of eugenics and this false idea of the white supremacy movement started in the 1800s after the Civil War. Because after the Civil War, there was a tremendous amount of hookworm, which could travel into your feet to affect your brain and to affect your dumbing down your intelligence and take away nutrients that can affect the brain. And there was the growth of what we know now today is called pellagra, which is the deficiency of niacin. In those days, they had the diet called the 3M diet of molasses and meat and pork and corn, mostly a maize or corn-based diet, and people were niacin deficient. And they called that, one of the things that happened was a causal neckness. You get red skin, particularly on your neck, one of the original, where the terms redneck came from. But pellagra causes delusional thoughts, increased violence, homicidal and suicidal behavior and thinking. It magnified violence in the South after the Civil War. And the American health authorities in those days didn't know it was a nutritional problem. They thought it was due to these people's genetics. And those days they blamed almost every disease on genetic issues. And there was a big movement in America to actually sterilize Americans who had pellagra or who had diseases of mental deficiencies. And then we had this movement, then the white supremacy movement, of course, which was started in this country with the eugenic movement. And Hitler and the Nazis read the work of these Americans and moved that information and started propagating it and practicing it in Europe as well. This idea of white supremacy movement and exterminating populations and citizens who they didn't feel it had as good genetics. In any case, what I'm saying right now is that this disease, pellagra, magnified the violence against blacks. It took 60 years. It wasn't until the 1910, 1920s when we first realized this was a nutritional deficiency, not due to some genetic disease. And then we're not even learning from this today. We're still blaming differences among people based on genetics and not on food, distribution of food and food consumption. And we're still not recognizing the brain damage and these horrors that are occurring due to nutritional deficiencies today. It's even with lead, even with the advent of lead poisoning in the 1940s and 50s and 60s, it was denied that was a problem with mental problems and disease until we finally got the lead out of the gasoline, and then we saw improvements happen there. We're seeing the same thing happen today, and that's really the term fast food genocide has to do with we're destroying people's potential to achieve the American dream. We're destroying their potential for happiness, for prosperity, for being freedom from serious illnesses. Nutritional science has made such incredible advances. It's out there in the literature, and whatever the factors are, whether it's the social evolution of our nation's history, or whether it's the billion-dollar food industries influencing our thought processes, we're still allowing people to be damaged tremendously, and we're having an incredible, tragic outcome in the modern world due to us not seeing these problems that are developing due to nutritional deficiencies.